It's Untitled Film Project Podcast time. Sorry, I'll never do that again. Welcome. We're talking about Knock at the Cabin, M. Night Shyamalan's latest movie. M. Night Shyamalan, who's had a career that has really been pretty roller coaster. Starts off with one of the most incredible movies of all time. His latest, Knock at the Cabin, is what we're talking about today. A girl and her parents vacation in the wilderness at a secluded cabin. And things are going great. Until that knock at the cabin when four strangers show up.
We were called and are united by a common vision, which has now become a command that we cannot ignore. The four of us are here to prevent the apocalypse.
Knock at the Cabin first takes. Let's start with Jeremy Gover.
First of all, I would like to apologize to my crewmates here because even though it was my fault, it was actually the car renter's fault. I had rented a car, and the short version is we had this all planned out. We're going to record it a certain day. It was right after Knock at the Cabin came out, and we were going to pounce on it, and it would have been to you guys 2 weeks ago. But instead, I had a car rental for work. I went and drove down to Atlanta. The car would not start once I got back in the car from my work trip. And I had to then go exchange the car at the Atlanta airport, which if you've ever been to the Atlanta airport, you know is a complete hassle and a half. And it put me 2 hours behind schedule, and therefore we could not record. So you're getting this late, and I want to apologize to everyone who has seen Knock at the Cabin and has been waiting for us to review this movie.
All three of you.
There's a lot to talk about. It doesn't matter if it's all three or not. It's
Hashtag blame Gover.
I still apologize.
You had your own horror movie.
It was a knock at the check engine light. Okay, so my notes are as follows for this one. They used the old school Universal logo to open up, and so I thought they were going to incorporate that somehow, and they didn't.
Okay, I didn't notice that.
It was just a stylistic. I don't know. I was like, okay, great, but they didn't blend it into an old cartoon or an old show. It's just like, oh, all right, old school Universal logo, great.
The tinfoil hat's already on.
It is.
Yeah.
But, no, we're gonna, like M. Night Shyamalan's career, which Jim just mentioned, we're going to go roller coaster here. The next thing is positive. It wasted no time. They jumped right in. It was a matter of, 2 minutes before, here we go.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's on.
Yeah, it was not like a setup and we're gonna get some B-roll of the family driving to the cabin and having a great time. No.
Yeah.
It's a girl collecting crickets.
And ish gets real.
Yep. It is. It wastes zero time getting off the ground, which I absolutely love. I really enjoyed Dave Bautista's performance. I thought it showed range in his, because if you think about other stuff, we know it was Drax and he's done a couple other things like that, Knives Out, right? But it's all the same kind of character, at least that I'm thinking of, which is a big brooding guy, kind of dumb, but also kind of, he's kind of mediocre intelligence.
Looks like a professional wrestler.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, okay. But in this, he shows acting range. He's got that quivering lip, but it's not overacted. He wants to connect with the family, and I believe it. It's pretty outstanding considering, again, visually, you're reminded constantly that it's Dave Bautista. This is a monster of a man who has tattoos all over him, but they still got me to believe that he really was Leonard. And I thought that was outstanding. So, again, he wants to be an actor going forward, not superhero, not
taken seriously.
And he one great step towards that for sure for me. I loved how the 8-year-old girl had a line mentioning she didn't like how her overzealous counselor always brought up her two dads. And I don't mean that as like a representation way, although that certainly checks that box.
Sure.
What I mean is it made me, even though I don't care, right, what anybody does with their life, that's not my business, but it gave me a different perspective because it wasn't a pushy line. It was just an observation from an 8-year-old. Like, I don't like it when she constantly brings it up and makes me think she doesn't approve that I have two dads.
Right.
And I was like, holy crap. Some people think that they're doing the right thing by constantly bringing it up.
Overcompensating.
Yes. And I thought that, I was like, that's interesting. So it made me think. And that was like 5 minutes into the film. That was like right out the gate. And I was like, all right, I'm already invested because the dialogue's got me. Last thing I'll say, I want to know from the listeners, if you went and saw this film in your area and you're not in Nashville, I want to know if it was regional because it's something they could do with a digital film. They could put a regional thing in there. There's no talking head on the camera, but in the newscast, they say, what? What
I
do you
know
laugh?
where you're going with it.
Okay,
I like this.
All right, I was like,
I'm interested. I have no idea where
I was like,
going.
am I falling off the deep end here? Like you're over there chuckling,
I'm
laughing.
glad you're bringing this up.
Okay. In the newscast, it says outside Nashville in Tennessee.
Yes.
Now, we are in Nashville, Tennessee, where we saw the film, and there's no talking head on camera saying that. They could easily give a version of the film to Des Moines, Iowa, that says outside Des Moines in Iowa.
Yeah.
For that one line.
Go over when that happened, my entire theater just just a groan. As soon as that happened, I was like, this is perfect. This is because the man was like, how's the audience going to react? And immediately, But I remember scribbling that. The second I heard it, I was like, I wonder if that's regional.
Seriously, I'm going to doubt that. I think we would have heard about it if that was the case.
It's city.
Honestly, they may have picked it just because it's in the middle of the country and it's a big city.
Sure.
They may have done that.
And in those newscasts, they mention several, all kinds of places around the world.
Right.
So we never expect to hear Nashville. We just we are programmed to not expect to hear Nashville. We're expected to hear Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., L.A., San Francisco.
Seattle, sure, whatever.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just wondering if you're in Baltimore, if yours said in the middle of Baltimore or near Baltimore. I want to know.
Good point.
Did yours say that or not? Nashville outside of Tennessee. Maybe I'm way off the mark and I'm way overthinking it. But I remember thinking, like, if the newscaster was on screen when she said it, I wouldn't even have thought that.
If it were any other director, I'd be like, no. But
I could totally see them just
like, here's a package for this market,
plug it in the line, and you go here. Plug it in the line, goes here. Because think about that.
You could do that.
Think about that. If you're in Boise, Idaho, and you hear outside Boise in Idaho, that hits you on a different level.
It does.
Than if it's in Miami or some other place.
When you're thinking about the film and what it's discussing.
It holds more weight.
Yes, for sure.
Yes.
And again, it's a way, it's potentially genius.
Yeah.
If it's true. But I could also be way overthinking.
Did they tailor it to their audience? Very interesting. If that's the case, I'll be very surprised.
Yeah.
But I want to know that.
Here and now, we'll get to our grades later, and I'll say what my grade is, and that's my score. Excuse me. I'll get to my score later, and we'll talk scores and all that. But I'm here to tell you that if that was intentional and it is regional, if Des Moines got Des Moines and Tulsa got Tulsa and outside Oklahoma, and right, if these are all regional, Albuquerque if that really happened, I am saying it here and now, clarifying, I will jump an entire point.
Okay.
Because it's that amazing of an idea. Bradford.
Your initial takes on Knock at the Cabin.
Dave Bautista, I appreciate him more as an actor and what he's accomplishing because he was believable in his character. He's a big, brooding dude, but in the way he's able to show emotion with his facial expressions, his micro expressions as well, too, it was believable that he was a teacher and a coach. Because as soon as you say coach, you're like, oh, okay. So he's probably a former athlete or something like that in his younger days, but he's turned into a teacher. He is emotional. You can tell there's a connection. I really appreciate that, and I'm glad Gover brought that up because it brings me back to when we were talking about Black Adam in terms of casting with The Rock. If The Rock were in this role, there's no way. There's no way I would have believed it because I don't think he has the acting chops to pull off this role.
Agreed.
Dave Bautista is showing that he has acting chops in this to be able to pull this off and make me believe that. Because I don't think Dwayne Johnson, while I love so many of his movies, they're very entertaining, I don't think he has the acting chops to pull off this type of role. And I say that because when we discussed Black Adam, that was the big problem I had was The Rock in his movie.
Yeah.
For that. But Dave Bautista, I believed him so much in that he had empathy in his character. He was trying to connect because he felt like they had this really difficult decision to make, even though his counterparts didn't necessarily feel the same, especially Rupert Grint Redmond didn't feel the same. I believe Dave Bautista in his role. And I really like that because we're seeing more of him. I mean, his Glass Onion role was still more what we've seen from Dave Bautista, right?
Mm-hmm.
His other roles where he's done like the family action type of thing, still that type of Vin Diesel-ish type of role, like the Tooth Fairy or whatever.
Yeah.
No, that's The Rock. Or the Pacifier, that was Vin Diesel. This one was a true acting role that it wasn't about action. It wasn't about being a grunt or anything like that. He had a role to play, so I really did appreciate that. I wish we had a little more Rupert Grint. It's really good to see him active as well. And I was curious, as soon as he appeared on screen, like, what kind of accent are we going to get from Rupert Grint? Is it going to be American? Is it going to be British? It was Massachusetts. It was Boston is what we got out of him.
It was working class.
Yes, it was. And overall thoughts of this movie is as I'm watching it, it's obviously what M. Night Shyamalan's wanting you to do is question so many things of, is it real, is it not real? When they're bringing up the timing of the newscast, they could have known this. This has been a story for a while. I knew this. And also the differences between the two parents, between Eric and Andrew as well, and how they see the world and their worldview. One, it was Jonathan Groff. I still cannot see him as not the king.
King George from
Still
Hamilton.
King George from Hamilton to me. But what I appreciate about this, as Gover mentioned how it jumped right in, is they kind of explained the characters with flashbacks.
I really admired that.
And I like that because we're getting tidbits of story as the story's progressing. So the story's still moving along while throwing in tidbits of the past to not make you feel like it's coming to an abrupt halt, or that you had to over-explain it in the beginning to get to where you're at.
Because they're not long either.
They're not long. They're
Right.
like 30 seconds, 40 seconds, a minute at most.
Vignettes.
Yeah. So I really liked it because it was enough, though, to get an idea of these characters, to build why Andrew felt this way of why they was being targeted and attacked, why they felt this way with family, why they felt so many different ways, why they felt like they could be targeted, even though they necessarily weren't targeted. They were just the people at the cabin, and the 4 horsemen were told to go to that cabin.
But those flashbacks also serve to introduce doubt to the audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which one
100%.
is it?
100%. So that's why I liked about that's what I liked about those little segments, was that it's introducing doubt, it's building the characters, but it's moving the story and progressing, because then the next thing happens and you can see Eric and Andrew reacting differently in so many different ways,
and then
how
you
they're
know
building those
why.
characters, and you know why they're doing that. Then you get to, well, I'm surprised Gover didn't bring this up, when, like, as an actress, she did a pretty fantastic job.
I was really waiting, like, when I saw this movie, I go, I wonder if
What
Jeremy is going to just destroy this kid as an actor because he hates child actors.
I have a reputation of hating child actors. That is true. I mean, she, as of right now, she's on my Music City Film Critics Association Best Child Actress.
Best child actor,
All right.
under 20.
She was great.
Small cast overall when you really do think about it. There are bits and pieces here of other ones from the TV part, but I liked seeing the small cast.
Yeah.
Because the interaction between them was great.
But when they shoot during COVID, you're going to get a small cast.
Yes, of course.
But I think it played in this movie's favor.
It
No,
did.
for sure. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, it
It
kind of
did.
helped.
What got me too is our rating, but I'm glad they didn't just directly show an axe going into someone or anything like that. It provided more of a, to me, when you hear it,
Yeah.
when the 4 horsemen are having to off each other, that it flashes away to something else, and it actually provides a little bit more of a, that had to be pretty gruesome, because it's right in front of the 3 family members as well. So
Yeah.
that actually provided more to me than actually seeing it. I think that's what I do like, is when you can pull that off and get the gruesomeness without actually having to show it,
Yeah.
but you understand it. So I appreciate that factor from a directing point of view. The end, though, is what got me, is because everyone is waiting for the Shyamalan twist.
Well,
And-
can I take it from there?
Yes, I was
Because-
waiting for it. So, Jim.
Because that is one of the things I really loved about this movie is I think everybody goes into an M. Night Shyamalan movie expecting, where's the twist? Ooh, there's going to be a twist.
I certainly did.
Everything.
Everybody,
So,
yeah.
so did I. And I really loved the fact that it was not that kind of a movie. The twist was the doubt you had as a viewer, and that some of the characters had, whether these 4 people that show up at the cabin with this, gruesome choice they're going to make them, have to make, are these people psychopaths? Are they just mistaken? And there is no apocalypse that's going to happen? Or are they real? And what they're doing is like the right thing to do, this horrible choice that they make, this family make. I think, as opposed to having a twist, it was, I don't know what the real reality is. and of course, the family doesn't either. I think Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge played their separate characters really well. I think they voiced a lot of the audience's concerns and doubts. I was sitting there saying things in my head about, like, well, I don't know, what if that newscast about something terrible happening in the world was faked, and they're just feeding it to the cabin. And then a second later, one of the characters is voicing that very concern, and it gets answered, or at least mostly answered, right? Still leaving you with some doubt. I think Dave Bautista, I love his career arc and the choices he's making. I don't know about you guys, but I think like I've done I made the mistake with so many other actors from, The Rock, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm gonna be a movie star, but I have this other past, that doesn't really necessarily relate to making films. And then, he says he's not going to be Drax anymore after a certain point on Guardians of the Galaxy. And I'm like, oh, gee, what's he going to do? Knives Out was just a little bit out of his Drax character. He wasn't playing dumb. He was really just kind of playing, I think, a certain segment of loud America. And when he made Leonard come to life in this film of a guy who understands children, loves children, that's the reason he's there doing this terrible thing. He loves children. I believed him 100%. I believed I could walk into his classroom and it would totally make sense. So credit to Dave Bautista, who I think has been nudging us in the right direction and then just nailed it on this one. I really think he was the standout. I think he really gave us the believability needed to make you wonder for most of the movie, what's really going on here? And I think if I had figured out what was really going on in that movie any earlier than I did, and we'll get to that, I don't think I would have enjoyed it. Okay, so I have a question for you guys as a group. This movie does, play with your head. Whatever these four people are saying, is it going to happen? Is it real? Are they just out of their minds and this is crazy? You really don't know till a certain point. And I've talked to a lot of people. Where was the point in the movie? And here's where we're going to get into spoilers, really. At what point did you realize what the reality truly was? What tipped you off where you go, all of a sudden, yep, absolutely, this is an actual apocalypse that's going to happen, and it's not a bunch of crazy people showing up.
When things started burning around them, when it wasn't on TV anymore. Seeing on TV, there's still that fourth wall, but as soon as like a crash happens or things go up in flames, fire rains down from the sky, and you can see it, I think that's the moment there. And it took that long to get to that point because on TV, anything could be pre-recorded, could be faked. What if they're feeding something in there? Somebody else could have control of everything there. But when you see with your own eyes, there's only so much that can be controlled. That was the tipping point, for me at least.
Jeremy?
For me, it's when Leonard took his own life on the porch, and when he was doing it, the plane fell out of the sky behind him over the left shoulder of the character.
That was the same for me.
That was the moment where I was like, okay, this is really happening.
Right. I was leaning toward this is probably real when I saw, all the lightning strikes around the cabin and the fires and everything. I mean, but when it became, this is definitely a real apocalypse, was seeing that plane fall out of the sky near the cabin, not on TV. And so our tripping points, I think, are the same.
They are.
When we saw them,
described in more detail.
We saw them in real life as opposed to just hearing about them from words of the characters or seeing it on a TV screen, which could be faked. We're in the world of deep fakes, right? So, yeah, that was the point where I go, wow, okay, this is really happening.
When we're seeing the characters, Eric and Andrew as well, too, did we all know who was going to be the one to sacrifice themselves?
I thought Jonathan Groff had played Eric well enough to be the hero. And that for the most part, as I was watching,
that he was clear of mind finally.
Yeah, he was clear of mind, and it wasn't a concussion, and like he knew that this had to be done, and I'm the type of guy to do it, which makes him a lot like Leonard. If these are people who don't want to do any of the things they have to do, but feel they must for the greater good,
and that it took that moment too, like what you said, with seeing the plane crash as Dave Bautista's character is cutting his throat, for Andrew to realize that this is going to have to happen as well too, because it didn't take long for the trigger to be pulled.
No.
Once the decision was made, they knew they had to do it quickly too.
Why relish in it?
Right.
Just...
Yeah, exactly. It's only going to get worse. You better do it now.
Right.
We only have a few, and that they made that very clear. We only have this much time. You this is your last chance.
And Jonathan, the part that got a little more emotional too and made it more real was Jonathan Groff's monologue, basically, and discussing the future that he sees.
Yeah.
For Wen and Andrew and their future as well,
Yeah.
too, that he is of clear mind.
Which was also a flash forward.
Yeah.
But he's of clear mind, which means he can make that decision. His mind is made up, and that also helps Andrew feel more comfortable in helping him with that decision to make that come to fruition as well, because he hears him talk about how clear of mind he is in the future that he sees.
I found it very interesting talking to somebody who had read the book, and I didn't know this was based on a book.
Yeah. Quite different.
It has a very different ending, a much darker ending in the book. I don't want to give it out, but if you thought this had a difficult, dark ending, the book, way, way worse.
It almost made me want, not the book part, but after they went to the diner and see all this stuff happening, I almost wanted a little bit more of an epilogue.
Yeah, there was
just a little bit. Even like a flash forward 5 years later or something, I don't know, just to close it up, even though that's not an M. Night Shyamalan thing to do those types of things. I kind of wanted to see it of like, well, let's see where the world's at 5 years after this happened, like 5 years, like with the blip. Like what happened with the world?
Yeah, we just got them driving off in the truck.
Yeah.
Should we get the scores then?
Let's do it. So I really enjoyed this movie. M. Night Shyamalan can do great stuff, and he can do absolute garbage, I think. And I think everybody can agree on that. Depending on which movies, you can quibble about that. I think this was a very good M. Night Shyamalan movie. I truly was in doubt as to what the reality was until the point we talked about just briefly. David Bautista, I just really enjoyed his character and what he brought to that. It made it feel real. Eric and Andrew, the parents, and Wen, the daughter, felt real to me. And I wasn't, after a bit, I realized I don't think I'm going to get a twist. And I loved it for that. I loved it that I just had to figure it out along with the characters. And, and I just thought this was really well done. I'm going to give it a 7. And it's a movie that I don't know if I'll watch again because now I know I know what's going to happen. But I really enjoyed that suspense thriller part of this movie.
So, if there's an apocalypse happening, when planes are falling out of the air and tsunamis are wiping out the entire West Coast, are you going to be like, you know what I could go for right now? A pastrami on rye. That diner was packed. What the hell? Who's going to a diner when all that stuff is happening?
Well, maybe they were already there because things were happening pretty quickly.
I think I think they were just dining and started seeing stuff on the TV and just couldn't leave.
But did this not happen over hours? They even said, "Go get some rest, get a good night's sleep. We'll go again tomorrow."
That was the first thing. That was the one thing, and then everything else happened the same day. Just a few hours.
As an audience goer, all I can think about during that diner scene was like, I get it. You're around people. Like I need you to need to see other humanity. But that place is like sold out. And if crap's going down, I'm not being like, you know what, Waffle House sounds amazing right now. That is not going to happen.
But if the Waffle House is open, that means it's okay.
Well, that's true. Maybe that's a bad example. Sorry.
That's just science.
Throw it out.
That's facts,
If this is a much more important point than that one, but that would still bother me. If that dad was supposed to be the spiritual one, while the other one was supposed to be the agnostic, atheist one, I didn't get that at all. I'm sorry, but you can pray and I won't judge you. That's a throwaway line to me. It speaks to that. It speaks to the fact that he's a believer, you're not.
Right.
Okay. It speaks to that, but it doesn't color in the picture. And if I'm supposed to believe that the spiritual one brings the other guy home, brings his boyfriend, I guess at the time, home to meet his parents, and the dad is just there, and he's clearly not happy with the arrangement, and his mom tries to cover, and when they kind of leave after 15 minutes, they drove 7 hours, whatever they said, right? That's not necessarily a Christian thing. That is a old white guy who just doesn't understand how his son, who he's thought was going to marry this woman, and they're going to have this family together. that image of that your whole life is derailed. That's all that means. It doesn't mean that, oh, he's a Christian and they believe. It doesn't mean any of that to me. So, like, I understand it can, but it doesn't automatically mean that. Right. So, to me, I had a real hard time with that. I had a hard time with it. Like, so he's the spiritual one. It took me to the whole movie to figure that out, to figure out that this was the role that they were playing. So, again, I could have missed something.
So it's almost like the Pedro Pascal skit on SNL where he plays the Latin mom. And all I had to do is say, well, she's a believer. Oh! That's it. That's all it took. The believability there.
Like, it's not like they met at a church or that he was maybe a priest and clearly wearing... Like, it wasn't a overtly religious scenario. It was just a married couple meeting their son's significant other. He didn't approve, and they left real quick. That doesn't mean Christianity to me at all, or spiritual. It doesn't mean believe. All it means is just that it's an older guy who doesn't understand.
Maybe it's just trying to establish another hurdle they've had to overcome.
No, sure. But I'm saying if the point of it was this guy's spiritual, this guy's not, and that's part of the picture, I didn't get that from that. It wasn't overt enough, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay. I knowing people who have gone through that, who have a strong Christian background, but then when it comes to the point of acceptance, somebody can't get past that. I've seen that play out in real life a bunch of times, but that doesn't mean that there's still not a strong Christian foundation. It's just that one person, it falls apart when it comes to this issue or that issue.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's not real. I'm simply saying that if I was supposed to gather that this guy's spiritual, this guy's not. If I was supposed to, he's from a spiritual upbringing, I'll put it that way.
Okay.
And this guy is not. If I'm supposed to gather that from that scene, that flashback scene, that's not.
I guess I didn't even.
Yeah,
they're not parallel to me.
I don't think I got that. I think I saw that as Justin said, that was just another hurdle they had to get through to get to the point where they are now this family.
And that is exactly how I took it. I'm simply saying that in retrospect, at the end of the film, when he's giving the monologue, like I saw something in the in the mirror, and all these spiritual things. He's understanding that there's the four horsemen. Like he has a vague understanding of that, and they've come to like that. The apocalypse is really that all. It seemed like they should have established those two personality traits. I don't know. I could have missed something for sure, but I just thought that was very loose, and I didn't care for that. I might have missed something also on this, but I'd love to open this up for discussion to a point because I know we're giving scores here. But I never got an answer as to why that couple was chosen or why that cabin, whoever would be there.
You're not supposed to get that.
Yeah,
but that's real loose to me.
You're wanting too much from a movie like this, I think.
Yeah, I really think.
Well, it's based on it has to be them. They say it over and over again. It has to be you. You have to choose.
Because the four horsemen were told at that cabin, whoever is at that cabin, it has to be them. They have to make the choice.
Right.
Okay.
And it just came to in a vision.
Yeah.
A shared vision.
Like this kind of movie, I think you're wanting too much, expecting too much explanation.
Very possible. And like I said, I over...
I accepted the answer that they gave is what I did because then it's not as important. And I hate to even say this, but it's not that deep, even though it is that deep because it's that deep of a movie.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
No, you're right. Yeah, I think you're just expected to buy into it. Like, yeah, they've seen the visions, they're believers, and they were just told to come do this.
Because even the couple, Eric and Andrew don't understand, and they're still trying to understand. So you being that perspective of Eric and Andrew, because you still don't know, it's like you're asking along with them. You still don't get enough of it, but I think that's okay.
It is okay for 80% of the movie until the climax when you're supposed to get answers. So I was just like, why? Why? And I didn't understand why. And then the last thing is second last thing, I left the theater feeling unfulfilled, not relieved, not sad, just indifferent. And I think that works against the movie. And then my last thing is M. Night Shyamalan is hit or miss for me. Sixth Sense, hit, obviously. Lady in the Water, miss. Unbreakable, hit. Signs, miss. The Village, hit. Knock at the Cabin, miss. I give it a 4.5.
I like Signs.
I like Signs.
But 4.5, that's a much lower score than you've given in a while.
Well, and Jim even said it is hit or miss. We all know that. I think every single person knows that. And it's hit or miss depending on the person.
Yes,
and how they interpret a film.
Yeah, it hits and misses everyone
So obviously
differently.
It did not hit with Gover for those reasons. And I understand that because I can't argue with that because everyone interprets an M. Night Shyamalan movie differently.
Indifference is that's rough because that is certainly something that no filmmaker wants. I mean, I think they would.
Right.
I think Shyamalan would rather have you hate his movie
Than be indifferent to it.
than be indifferent.
The only character that I left feeling sorry for, will come as no surprise, is Wen.
Yeah.
Because she lost one of her parents.
She had to witness all this.
And she had to go through it all.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only person. Everything else, I'm like, okay, I don't know why. I don't know why I care. Because you didn't give me a why.
But even then, as they're flashing through different things, as they discover things in the truck,
Yeah.
that's also becoming the reality of how each of the four horsemen were telling some truths, except for Redmond, who was true. Andrew did
Yes.
nail around in the head there too, but he was trying to change. That's what they showed as well.
Yeah.
That's why he changed his name. But how Adrian did have a son.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, stuff like that. It's like trying to save her son. How Sabrina, you could tell, definitely was a nurse.
She cared about
She cared about
saving
people. So
lives. Yeah.
all those little things like that too, and that's made it more real. And I'm glad we had some time after this film because I don't think I could have formed a good opinion on it if we recorded the day of or the day after.
Mm-hmm.
These are the types of films that take some time to digest, to
You
think
gotta
about,
simmer.
to read as well, and to really
Mhm.
think about these characters and think about so many different things. So I appreciated the non-twist in this as well. What bumps the score up for me is Dave Bautista's acting.
Yep.
His ability there, and the non-twist actually bumps it up for me because I was wondering what the twist would be. That's always the thing, right?
Mhm.
As we discussed, it's always the thing of what's the twist? What's going to happen here? Or how are they going to twist this? Once we got so deep in this movie and going, what are they going to do? Is it a movie set? Is it something like they've already done that? Like
Right.
not having the twist to make this being the real apocalypse, that's a twist enough
Yeah.
right there. So I actually came in my mind with a lower score than what I'm actually going to give it because the discussion helped me understand more about the film and actually have my own thoughts come to more fruition after we discuss this as well too.
Wow. We're not just entertainment. We're educational.
When you say it like that, you're going to the bottom shelf. So I came in here and I was expecting to give it a 6. After further discussion and reevaluating what I thought about the movie, especially Dave Bautista, and having more discussions about the twist or the non-twist on it, I'm giving it a 7.
Upon further review, it gets a 7.
Mm-hmm.
I have one last question to ask you about this, guys. Did you feel, or do you feel now that I bring it up, that it is possible that Wen and her surviving father become 2 of the next 4 horsemen and eventually have to take on the role that Leonard and the gang had to do in this movie at some point in the future?
Why you got to be like that?
I'm writing the next movie.
Why
And if anybody does that, they owe me a check.
Tap at the cabin.
Tappa.
That sounds like the
I don't even say
the
it.
bad channels at the
I know.
hotel room
Don't say it.
version of this movie.
Grover's going to cut that.
I might leave it in,
Oh,
actually.
please don't cut it. Don't cut it. We heard about it at the beginning. Jeremy, tell us again, what's the big question you have for this episode?
Jim, thanks for asking. I don't know where that came from. The 4 characters who descend upon the cabin are the symbols, of course, of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which, if you think about all 4 of those people, it kind of represents the different types of people in the world.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Little
Right?
bit.
Like, you're like, okay, this person's usually angry. They may not be like Rupert, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Sure.
This person's sympathetic. This person's help. So with that in mind, it's a reach. I know. With that in mind, the big question is, what character that you've seen on the silver screen do you most relate to? Again, I know it's a reach, but that was my.
Oh, does it have to be silver screen?
It does have to be silver screen.
I
Did you
picked
pick a TV show?
Yeah, I picked the TV character.
All right, we'll let Bradford pick a TV show.
Oh, I thought,
Actually,
I thought which character from this movie did you have to?
Oh no!
Oh,
So we have 3 completely different perspectives.
Okay,
here.
well, this is kind of interesting. So let's.
Should I start to buy you guys some time?
No.
Okay.
we roll with it.
All right.
I'm going to give you the answer that I thought was the question.
Okay.
So why don't
That
you start with the way you gave the question?
Okay.
What's the character you most identify with?
So in the movie Can't Hardly Wait,
Oh boy.
Preston Myers is who I most identified with, and while watching the film. Not now.
Okay.
I'm 45 years old. when watching the film in the late 90s, it was me to a T.
Okay, now I have not seen the movie,
Okay.
so tell me why that character is like you.
He's an everyday dude, nothing special, not popular, not a nerd, just a guy who's just everyone kind of knows, but no one really knows, right?
Yeah.
And he wants the popular girl. He wants to be in a relationship with her. He wants to offer her more than what she's always offered, which is sexual advances and just, eye candy, right? All that, right? He wants to give her a deep relationship of like, I want to get to know who you are. I care more about you as a person as opposed to just your looks, all those kinds of things. And that was me growing up. I always tended to gravitate towards the kind of girl next door / popular girl, but I never thought about just narrow-minded, one-sided relationships. I always cared about the person on a deep level.
Preston didn't.
Yes, he did.
He never tried to get to know her. He just fell in love with her without even knowing who she was.
Right,
Preston Miller's he's a terrible person.
What are you trying to say, dude?
He's a terrible dude. I'm trying to say that I think you better reevaluate.
Well, I'm saying at the time, in the late 90s, this is who I identified with.
So in the 90s, you just wanted the hot, popular girl?
No.
You just explained
the
he
character,
didn't.
dude. The character.
I know. I'm saying the character just wanted the hot, popular girl.
I saw myself as Preston, an everyday dude, not overly good looking, but certainly not a dog either.
Did you also take your best friend for granted?
I'm sure there were times. Yeah, I'm not going to say I didn't. But I'm sure Maddie felt taken for granted at certain times. Yes, that would not shock me. But he was also a wingman.
Did you try to call dibs on her?
Just like Lauren Ambrose's character is.
Okay.
What?
You try to call dibs on her?
Okay. It's clear this is going nowhere. The point is that
saying,
in the late 90s, right out of high school, I see this movie about high school love and graduating seniors, and I think, this is me. Preston is me. He wants a deeper relationship, no matter what Bradford says, with this girl, and he's going to give her something else other than what she's used to. That was me.
Justin Bradford.
This went a completely different
How did
direction
you,
than I thought it was going to go.
How did you interpret the question and then answer how you interpreted it?
So I just went with overall character, and I chose a character from
Borat. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I chose a character from the smaller screen, the television.
The telly, as
The
they
TV,
say.
The
if
telly.
you will. Yes.
If Jim could get his clicker, as they called it in his day, and we can change the channel to The West Wing
Okay.
and Sam Seaborn, which Rob Lowe's character in The West Wing, idealist, tries to see the best in people, loyal to a fault, is very disappointed when people disappoint him in terms of the loyalty and the idealism as well too.
Okay.
Overall, just especially those first 4 seasons, a very good person who doesn't always win necessarily, but still tries his best all the time, and is there for the people that entrust him and tries to do his best all the time. Those are the. I know you dive so much deeper into Sam Seaborn, but as a character,
But those
in
are
general,
the qualities that you felt you shared with him.
those are qualities I felt I shared with him as well too, and always trying to be the person that doesn't want to be involved in a situation of battling and fighting. I think there was the one episode with China and Taiwan where he's trying to help de-escalate those situations. I hate conflict as a person, so he tries to de-escalate quite often as well. And there's so many character elements of him that I feel like I can identify with.
All right.
So
I answered this question apparently very differently from everybody else because I thought it had to do with Knock at the Cabin. So I had to pick from one of those limited characters, and this was a very tough one for me because I was going back and forth between Jonathan Groff's character and Dave Bautista's character, Leonard, and I settled on Leonard.
Interesting.
This was a very tough choice for me. I made this question very hard on myself because
And it wasn't even the right translation.
I didn't get
so
it.
That makes it even better.
Yeah. So why did I pick Leonard, who is the leader of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse and has to do these horrible things? I sensed the kindness and gentility of that man before he got those visions, right, of what he lived out in his life, taking care of children, being a mentor, and all that kind of stuff. And then even after he gets the visions that he's, got a do this terrible thing and make other people do this horrible decision at the cabin. He's doing it, one, for the greater good. And, I try to think that I'm doing for the greater good. And he did it out of a sense of duty. And I think that's a big quality that I have to a fault, is I have a sense of duty. If a job's not getting done, I guess I've got to be the one that's got to do it. And that, I felt, was Leonard in Knock at the Cabin. So I choose Leonard. People can contact us through any social media out there, even the ones that haven't been invented yet. Just look for Untitled Film Project Podcast.
No pressure. Now I got to go create some new accounts.
Bradford stays on top of all of this stuff.
Jeez, there's going to be something called like Gropal. I'm going to have to make an account.
That was a hell of an improvisation right there. Holy crap.
Sign me up for Gropal.
That's GRAU umlaut PELL.
Umlaut.
Yes, special characters.
Oh, man. And the E is a 3 at the end.
Thanks for hanging out with us. I don't know why you did. I am Jim Chandler, along with Justin Bradford and Jeremy K. Gover. This is the Untitled Film Project Podcast. Cue the guitar guy.
Umlaut. Take that, John.
Thank you for listening to the Untitled Film Project Podcast. To support the show, please rate, review, follow, and subscribe. Original music by Jeremy Schwartz. Special thanks to the Music City Film Critics Association. Editing and post-production by Jeremy K. Gover. Voiceover by Chad Bennett. The Untitled Film Project Podcast is presented in cooperation with iHeartRadio.